Center for the Ethiopian Educational Information and Communication Technology presents Educational Satellite Television Programs.
Hello, teacher. Hello, students. Welcome to today's lesson on antiretroviral drugs. This is the first of a two-part lesson on this topic. In our last lesson together, we studied the life cycle of HIV. We discussed the role of CD4 cells within the immune system, and we learned about the 6 main steps involved in the reproductive cycle of the HIV virus. Today, we will learn about antiviral drugs. We will discuss what they are and how they work to inhibit the reproduction of HIV enzymes. Let us begin the lesson, students. As we know, there is no cure for AIDS, nor a vaccine to provide immunity against the disease. Students, what is the difference between a cure for AIDS and immunity against AIDS? Take a few minutes to discuss and compare these terms with a partner.
Students, let's get ready. Begin. Time's up. Let's get back to our lesson.
Hello, everyone. I wonder what ideas your discussions prompted. A cure for AIDS would mean that people who are currently infected with the disease could receive treatment, ridding their body of the disease. Immunity from HIV reproduction would make it possible for people who are not presently infected with AIDS to become resistant to the reproduction of the HIV virus in the T helper cells. Scientists are currently working on testing the effectiveness of different vaccines that could one day provide immunity. How do you think immunity against HIV reproduction would affect the people in Ethiopia? Teacher, when we have completed this lesson, please lead the students in a discussion about the effects of immunity against HIV within their own communities. Currently, the only medications that can be administered to combat AIDS are antiretroviral drugs. These drugs are used to slow down the progression of HIV into AIDS. Antiretroviral drugs work by interrupting various steps of the HIV life cycle. The goal is to either prevent the virus from reproducing in the CD4 lymphocytes or to decrease its lifespan to prevent the manufacturing of a new retrovirus. There are various antiretroviral drugs that act specifically to target different stages in the reproduction cycle. Antiretroviral drugs are most effective when they are used in combination. This is called high-activity antiretroviral treatment, or HAART. Since different drugs work during different stages of the HIV life cycle, it is important that the drugs are taken together. There are 5 general types of antiretroviral drugs that act in different ways at different stages of the cycle of reproduction. The first type is nucleotide reverse transcriptase inhibitors, or NATs. The NATs work by preventing the retrovirus from creating DNA based on its own RNA. Nucleotide reverse transcriptase inhibitors are similar in structure to the building blocks that make up DNA. The second type employs a different way of achieving the same goal as the first type of antiretroviral drugs. These drugs are called non-nucleoside reverse transcriptase inhibitors. These drugs work by attaching to the HIV's enzyme, preventing it from converting RNA into DNA. The third type of antiretroviral drugs are protease inhibitors. During viral assembly, the protease cut protein chains into parts for new HIV particles. Protease inhibitors block the cutting of viral protein chains that will eventually become the building blocks for the new HIV particles. The fourth type of newer antiretroviral drugs are entry inhibitors. During the first phase, by which the protein on the surface of HIV binds to the host cell, these drugs stop the retrovirus from entering the cell. They attach themselves to the proteins on the surface of the T cells, or HIV, to prevent the two cells from merging together. The fifth and newest type of antiretroviral drugs is the integrase inhibitor, which prevents the retrovirus from inserting its genetic code into host cells' DNA. Students, let us do an activity to review the information we have learned thus far. Determine if the following statements about antiretroviral drugs are true or false.
Students, let's get ready. Begin. Time's up. Let's get back to our lesson.
Welcome back, students. I am sure this was a simple activity for you. Let us go through the statements together to check if your answers are correct. The statement that antiretroviral drugs provide a cure for AIDS is false. The statement that antiretroviral drugs slow down the progression of HIV is true. The statement that antiretroviral drugs are no more effective if they are used in combination is false. High-activity antiretroviral treatment is most effective because it combines different drugs with the intention of combating the virus at different stages of its life. The statement that the goal of antiretroviral drugs is to prevent HIV from reproducing is true. The statement that the newest type of antiretroviral drug prevents the retrovirus from inserting its RNA into the host cell is true. How did you do? If you answered each statement correctly, great work. We have time for one last activity, students. Can you name at least 3 antiretroviral drugs that we discussed? You may begin now.
Students, let's get ready. Begin. Time's up. Let's get back to our lesson.
Welcome back, everyone. The antiretroviral drugs that we learned about are nucleotide reverse transcriptase inhibitors, non-nucleotide reverse transcriptase inhibitors, protease inhibitors, entry inhibitors, and integrase inhibitors. If you named all 5, You have done a fantastic job. Great work. This brings us to the end of our lesson. Today, we learned about antiretroviral drugs. We discussed the 5 types of drugs and explained how they function in the life cycle of the HIV virus. Until next time, thank you, teacher. Thank you, students.